Priya. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Namaskar to all of you. Maybe we are meeting after 6 months or 7 months. We had started these classes during the COVID, and when I went to India for pilgrimage, the lectures continued, but for some reason, because I too got COVID and traveling in India, I had to stop some of the lectures. Now, because some of the devotees insisted that we will again continue the series of lectures, and also it is the will of the Lord that we have to continue this session. We are again here meeting. We all know that I started this series of lectures with the life of Sri Ramakrishna, that is Ramakrishna, the great master, written by one of the direct disciples, Sharadanandaji Maharaj. After completing that, we had taken up the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, lives of the householder disciples. Though we have not yet completed all the lives, now to start the session, this new session or new series will take up the direct disciples, the monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. To start with, I just wanted to take up Swami Adbhutananda's life. Swami Adbhutananda, why did I choose? I always pray to the divine. I always request the Lord. I always follow what the Lord shows me. So I started thinking, an uneducated, a shepherd who didn't know even the traces of literacy or education. I can't use the word education, but I have to use the word literacy, reading or writing. And you will be surprised, Sri Ramakrishna tried his level best to teach this boy when Adbhutananda was a young boy, reading and writing alphabet, and Ramakrishna himself failed in that. So, in spite of that, Swami Adbhutananda could get the highest knowledge of Vedanta, Atmagnana, Brahmagnana, realize God and reach the highest. To which people tell that the present day breadwinning education, which we have degrees and master degrees, are in no way connected to getting spiritual knowledge. Swami Vivekananda has told us that divinity or knowledge or consciousness is already within us. It is nothing new. Then what is that we are doing in our life? We are only uncovering the wheel of ignorance which is covering the knowledge in us. That's why you could see Adbhutananda, though illiterate, educated in the real sense. Why? Because according to Swami Vivekananda, education is a manifestation of perfection which is already within man. So reading and writing And the Macaulay's breadwinning education, which we get in the form of degrees, will they help us? Yes, it will help us to sharpen our brain, to get the knowledge of the world. Taking the help of that, you may read and write, or you may use it for studying the scriptures. And then it may help us a little to go towards spiritual life or realizing our real nature. It is not at all necessary to prove that, to show to humanity that your breadwinning education in the form of degrees and master degrees is not at all necessary for God realization. To prove that point, maybe Ramakrishna made Swami Adbhutananda to be born in such a place where he couldn't get even the little trace of the modern day Macaulay's education, but by sincere faith, sincerity, but by vyakulata, yearning for God, he could realize God. That's all. Sincerity, yearning for God, these are the important things by which we can get God realization, and no other things like scholarship, our so many degrees and master degrees may not help us in getting that wonderful God realization. So now, without delaying, let us enter into the life and also the sayings of Swami Adbhutananda, who came in touch with Sri Ramakrishna and then who could realize the highest goal of human life. Now, I am now posted in South Africa. In India, during 1960s, or even before that, India was ruled by British government. It was completely, India was under the rule of British. They were using Indians and the wealth of India to loot it and take it to Britain and make it great, England, to make England great. And we could see, if you study history, British would create famine. You may wonder, how could they create famine? They would take away the food grains grown there to some other portion, some other part. They used to tax the people heavily. They used to tax everything. And they used to create artificial famine. And also they used to bring in a sort of present day, you can call it biological warfare, how COVID was introduced, developed in the lab, the virus of the bacteria, and how humanity was in problem. You all know that. I need not go into the politics of that. So they used to bring in plague, malaria, and so many other diseases. So if they wanted to push away the people, Indians, from some place to another place, to migrate them from another place, they used to control. They had total control of India at that time. So now they used to create famine, poverty, so that they could move the people from one place to another place, create scarcity of food, create trouble, famine, diseases, whereby they could take cheap labor. Indians were hardworking, so they were very sincere. They used to work hard. So they used to take them to different parts of the globe to put them into work in mining, in railways. So now should see that the first ship with the indentured labors, slavery was removed at that time. So a little polished or modern type of slavery was indentured labor. So they used to create famine, they used to create troubles, scarcity of food in India, whereby now people were forced to flee that place or go in search of job. So now the first ship carrying so many indentured laborers came to Durban, South Africa. in search of job. They told we will give you job. Maybe in another part of India, they took them by the ship, but they brought them to South Africa. Like that, many people, many poor people were also bought from North India, Bihar, UP, and to some extent, most of them were from Bihar, very little from Bengal, from Calcutta. Some more ships came to South Africa. So Bihar and that area, Bengal, so much of famine would be there. People died like vermin because of the machination of the British. There was a drastic reduction of population. Many people migrated to different countries. They went to Fiji Islands. They went to Sumatra, to West Indies. They went to Suriname. They came to South Africa. Different parts of the globe, people were taken. So because it was another type of slavery, indentured laborers they were called. So they were all bought here to South Africa. Maybe during the same time, at that period when people migrated from Bihar and that area where scarcity of food and famine was created by the British, maybe during that same period, because in 1860, the first ship came from Tamil Nadu, and later on, many ships load of indentured laborers came from Bihar. Why did I bring in this matter here? Maybe during the same time here from Bihar, because we can associate with the people who came from India, North India, especially Bihar. Some of the people, they came from Tamil Nadu, to some extent from Andhra. Most of them were from Tamil Nadu, from Chennai and Bihar. So those people who came from India, especially from Bihar, at the same time, because of the poverty, famine, and trouble, one family from Bihar in Chapra moved for greener pastures to earn money to make a living to the capital at that time, Calcutta, somewhere in the same time gap in India, 1860s. So we will see who is that boy from Bihar, just like those people moved from Bihar to South Africa, to Fiji Islands, and to some other places. Who is that person who moved to Calcutta? He could have also come to South Africa or some other place, but by destiny, by will of God, his uncle brought this young boy to Calcutta. And what happened to him? So let us see. Swami Adbhutananda, or he was called Latu. What was his real name? His earlier name given by his parent was, rather not his parents, but his near and dear ones. Parents passed away as soon as he was born. So his name was Rakshaturama. That became, in Bihari language, Rakturama. Local language, maybe the dialect at that time was Bhojpuri or some other dialect in and around Bihar. There were so many dialects, all those dialects in UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, they were all combined together to form a new language that is called Hindi. So the dialect which was spoken in and around Ayodhya is called Awadhi Bhasha, in which the Hanuman Chalisa is written, in which the Ramcharitmanas is written. Some of the songs written by Meera was in the Braja Bhasha, which was the dialect which is the dialect spoken in and around the birthplace of Krishna, that is Vraja or Vrindavana. So like that in Bihar too, there were so many dialects of Hindi. One is Bhojpuri and Maithili, so many other dialects are there. So in that language, local dialect, Rakturama means Rakshaturama, O Rama, because of the influence of Ramcharitmanas and Tulsidas, especially in North India, people have lot of respect towards Rama because of this Ramayana, version of Ramayana written by Sri Tulsidas in the local dialect, Awadhi Bhasha almost something like Hindi, but Awadhi Bhasha. So it was a common man's language. People could easily identify with that. They could read Ramayana. They carried Ramayana wherever they went. Even the people who came from North India, UP, Bihar, that area, they had bought Ramayana. Even now they follow Ramayana. That is their sacred book. Even if you go to Fiji Islands or West Indies or Suriname, wherever our Indians have gone, migrated, they're in large numbers there. They carried this Ramayana, and Ramayana was their mainstay. Now, that's why in North India, especially in Bihar, everybody would be named similarly from Ramayana. So the name of this boy was Rama, but it was added Rakshatu Rama, but it became Raktu Ram. Rakshatu Ram became Raktu Ram. Oh Rama, you have to protect this boy. Why? As soon as this boy was born, his parents passed away, both father and mother. So let us study his life. Swami Adbhutananda, familiarly and affectionately known as Latu Maharaj, was a true mystic. Through the careful training and divine influence of his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna. How could he get Sri Ramakrishna as his Guru, the Avatara Purusha, the Kali Yuga Avatara? How could this boy, so many people who migrated at that time couldn't get him? See, that is destiny. You need not go in search of the Guru. The Guru will come in search of you. The Lord will come in search of you. Only thing you have to develop is true devotion and sincere love to God. And God will make all arrangement. The Guru will come to you. The Lord will come to you. So you can see this boy, a true mystic. He was a true mystic. He came into contact with Sri Ramakrishna. And through the careful training and divine influence of this great Guru, the Master Sri Ramakrishna, this unsophisticated village boy became an illumined soul. Swami Adbhutananda's brother disciples, because this name, wonderful name, Swami Adbhuta, you know, most of us Indians will be knowing that term called Adbhuta. What great, what wonderful, what a surprising thing. Adbhuta. So Adbhutananda. Why was he given this name? Swami Vivekananda himself gave this name, the sannyasa name Adbhutananda, to Latu Maharaj. Why did he give this name? Swami Vivekananda said, Latu is Sri Ramakrishna's greatest miracle. Having absolutely no education, he has attained the highest wisdom, Brahma Gnana, simply by the virtue of the Guru's touch, simply by the will of Guru. And also, it cannot be one-sided, one-way traffic, not just by only by the effort of the Guru, but there was this sincerity and yearning for God realization from Latu Maharaj too. So both combined together. So Swami Vivekananda is telling, Latu is Sri Ramakrishna's greatest miracle, having absolutely no education. He has attained the highest wisdom, that is Brahma Gnana, simply by the virtue of Sri Ramakrishna's touch. Now, because of that surprising thing, the greatest miracle, Swami Vivekananda named him, gave the sannyasa name to him as Swami Adbhutananda. Another monastic disciple, direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, that is Swami Turiyananda, also said of Adbhutananda. What is that? See, another great important thing which we have to note. Many of us, that is many of the direct disciples or any sadhaka or any spiritual aspirant, so many of us had to go through the muddy waters of intellectual knowledge, the intellectual gymnastics, Many of us had to go through that, through the muddy waters of intellectual knowledge before we attained God. But Latu, that is Swami Adbhutananda, is a young boy. When he came in contact with Sri Ramakrishna, he jumped over, just like Hanuman. Swami Turiyananda is telling. He jumped all that muddy waters of intellectual gymnastics, scholarship, reading and writing, Vedanta, Vedas, scriptures, so many other intellectual gymnastics and so many other things. He didn't undergo that at all. He simply jumped like Hanuman, Swami Turiyananda is telling. So Latu jumped over them like Hanuman. According to the Hindu epic Ramayana, Hanuman went to Sri Lanka to search for Sita by jumping over the ocean from India. We all know that, everybody knows this story. So Turiyanandaji is telling that all of us, all other people had to go through these muddy waters of scholarship, studying that scripture, this scripture. So we had to take so much of difficulty to come out of this. So now let us see, what is the need of education? What does really education give to us? What should it give? What should the present day education or any other type of education, why is this education given to us? In Srimad Bhagavata, there is a statement which I have put on the doors of Sri Ramakrishna Vidyarthi Mandiram in Bangalore, an institution for the students home which I was looking after for 23 years in Bangalore. So there was no arch or there was no board. So we built the arch and I put this wonderful Sanskrit statement from Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of Parama Pujya Srimad Swami Harshanandaji Maharaj. And what was that? Ya vidya sa vimuktaye. The Srimad Bhagavata statement is Ya vidya sa vimuktaye. That is real education which liberates us, which gives us freedom. Note it, the statement of Bhagavata, Ya vidya sa vimuktaye. That is real education which liberates us, which gives us freedom from all the bondages, makes us free, gives us mukti, gives us liberation. That is true education. So another beautiful statement, while I was studying Sanskrit in India in my younger days, I'd heard from a scholar a wonderful statement. And what is that? Yadi shraddha syatam vidyaya kim prayojanam. Yadi shraddha na syatam vidyaya kim prayojanam. What is the meaning of this Sanskrit statement? Yadi shraddha syatam vidyaya kim prayojanam. If you have shraddha, you should note that there is an ocean of difference between belief and shraddha. Vishwasa and shraddha. See, in Tulsi Ramayana, before starting that, and even our great Kalidasa also has written in his shloka, Shiva Parvati Shraddha Vishwasa Rupinam. So when you hear something from the elders or from the scriptures, you get some sort of a belief. Yes, you have so many beliefs in you, but that belief will become Shraddha when that belief becomes intense and you start putting that into action in your life, bringing that into your life, then that becomes Shraddha. So about Shiva and Parvati, there Tulsi Das Ji, in the beginning of his Tulsi Ramayana, Ramcharitmanas, he has written some Sanskrit verses. After that, he starts the whole of Ramayana in Avadhi Bhasha. But in the beginning, he has started in the Sanskrit language, and in that, Shiva and Parvati, while he is remembering them worshipping them, he tells Shraddha Vishwasa Rupinam. Kalidas also long back years written the same thing. So Shraddha and Vishwasa are not the same thing, they are different. So now we have belief in so many things, but we don't have Shraddha. When it starts percolating into your veins, into every part of your body, into every part of the mind, then it will convert into action. Every human being is nothing but epitome of his Shraddha, his belief. So now, here, what is education? What should education give us? Vidya give us? Here, by that Sanskrit shloka, Yadi Shraddha syatam vidyaya kim prayojanam. Yadi Shraddha na syatam vidyaya kim prayojanam. What is the use of education if you have already Shraddha in you? What is the use of education if the Shraddha doesn't give you Shraddha? Sorry, what is the use of education if the education doesn't give you Shraddha? That means, what should you get from this statement? That if you have to get education, by education, we have to get Shraddha. If education is not giving us Shraddha, then that is not education. So true education should give us Shraddha. So it's a very big subject. In Viveka Chudamani, Shankaracharya gives a wonderful meaning for Shraddha. Guruvakyasya, Shastravakyasya, Satya Buddhyavadaranam. So you hear from the gurus, from the elderly people, from your father and mother, from other great people, from the books, from the scriptures, you read so many things. So Satya Buddhyavadaranam, should have firm conviction in that and start acting accordingly. So Shraddha is belief in action. When you put that into practice, when it starts percolating in your every action, then that becomes Shraddha. So now, after reading the scriptures, what is that you have to get in the form of Shraddha? Should we go on continuing reading the scriptures and keep quiet? No. How does that Shraddha manifest? Shraddha manifests in the form of action. What is that action here? Your sadhana. You will get that intense desire to realize God. So that is Shraddha. So I have to realize God. I have to know who I am. So that is Shraddha. So now you can see here, Latu Maharaj, or Latu, the young boy at that time, he never had any formal education or literacy or any scholarship, or he didn't study any Veda or Vedanta. But he got the highest goal of life, God realization, just by his Shraddha. So that's why here you should note that anybody and everybody, whether he's a man or a woman, no difference, whether is young or old, whether he's educated or uneducated, literate or illiterate, rich or poor, anybody, what is the only condition? That you should be a human being. That's all. You should have love towards God. You should have deep desire to know God. Mumukshutvam, jignasa. If you have this, that is more than enough. No other condition. You may have money, you may not have money. You may have riches, you may have degrees or master degrees. Do not worry about that, whatever it might be. You might have committed any amount of sin. You may be the worst of the human being. Do not worry. The saving factor is the Lord exists in you. You can come out of any situation and realize that highest goal. Nobody can deny that a woman or a child or a poor man or educated or the high caste or the low caste or the man or that person of this religion, person of this color, only people of India or only people of West or the only people of Africa will get this. No. Any human being who has the desire to realize God can get it, irrespective of whatever he might be. So to prove this, you can see Adbhutanandaji was brought into a family where poor family, in an uneducated situation. And from there, just by his sincerity, Shraddha, he got everything, the highest in life. So now he jumped over all these muddy things of scholarship, studies, and other things like Hanuman, Turiyanandaji tells. And his life, Adbhutananda's life, teaches us how to live in God without touching the dirt of the world. Latu's lack of formal education made him unique. So because of that uniqueness, Swami Vivekananda named him Swami Adbhutananda. So Latu's lack of formal education made him unique among Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples. Perhaps because his mind was uncluttered, no prejudices. So if you start studying, see, you will become a bookworm. So I'm not telling that you should give up education, your formal education, no. I'm just only telling that it is not necessary, even without that. So that should not be construed by somebody that, oh, Swamiji has told, and because of Adbhutananda, we need not go through. The present day young student should not take these words and tell that, oh, we need not study, we will go for God realization. No, that is not the idea. I'm just giving you the clarity for God realization. All these things are not at all necessary. Latu's lack of formal education made him unique among Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples. Perhaps because of his mind was uncluttered by intellectualism and not trained to doubt. See now, the present day education, yes, we have to know how and why. We have to explore, analyze the whole world. But the present day education makes us have lot of doubts and doubts and doubts, doubting everything. It should not become a phobia. It should not become a mania. So the present day education makes us, gives this mania of doubting everything and anything, and we lose Shraddha. Education, our Vidya should have been giving us Shraddha, but instead we are losing it and we become Samshayatma, Samshaya, everything you doubt and doubt and doubt, doubting Thomas. And we go away from spiritual life. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells, Samshayatma vinashyati. He goes away from, nobody will be destroyed, everybody will be saved because we have the Paramatma Swarupa in us. But the more we have this nature of doubting everything and anything, we go away from spiritual life. That's all. It will take a long time to come back from that. So what is the opposite of Samshaya? Shraddha. So now, perhaps because Latu's mind was uncluttered by intellectualism and not trained to doubt, so you should take care to know that. You should be very, very careful to think that just lack of formal education or not getting educated will not give you Shraddha. So important thing is you should get Shraddha, that's all. Whether you are educated or uneducated, if you want God realization, the important thing is Shraddha. So again, Bhagavad Gita himself, Lord Krishna himself tells, Samshayatma vinashyati Shraddhavan labate gnanam. One who has Shraddha, he gets Brahmagnanam. So that belief in put into action, Shraddha is very, very important, Shraddha. So Latu Maharaj, there was no, in his in his mind was not uncluttered by intellectualism and not trained to doubt everything. So what happened? What was the result out of it? He absorbed the instructions of his guru. Whatever his guru Ramakrishna told him, he could absorb it. He could get it. He could put it into practice. You will see in the life now. It would not doubt his words of guru. Simply had deep. See, Guru Vakyasya Shastra Vakyasya Satya Buddhi Avadaranam. So he had intense faith and he started putting into practice the words of Guru, whatever Sri Ramakrishna told him, with unquestioning simplicity. Once Sri Ramakrishna told Latu in an ecstatic mode, that is in Samadhi, Bhava Samadhi, that one day the gems of Vedas, the wonderful knowledge here, gems of Vedas means the wonderful knowledge of Vedas, will come out of the, not only of Veda, Vedanta, all the Shastras, Veda and Vedanta will pour forth from Latu's lips, from your lips. Ramakrishna told this directly to Latu. The gems, because he has not read anything from the Vedas, is unlettered. But Ramakrishna is prophesying to Latu that future from your mouth, gems of Veda and Vedanta, knowledge of Veda and Vedanta will come out, will pour forth from your lips. I will give you one incident which happened in the life of Latu Maharaj later on, when he was very old. So there was one great scholar, Sanskrit scholar, who was lecturing in Kathopanishad. He was taking a series of lectures in Calcutta, in and around Calcutta. It was very popular at that time. Many people were going to hear that wonderful lecture on Kathopanishad, Nachiketa and Yama, the conversation between Yama and Nachiketa. So in that, Latu Maharaj also had gone to that lecture. He was old at that time. He had already realized God. He was quite old. Ramakrishna was not there at that time. With one of his sevak, assistants, or a sadhu who was helping him because he was already old, he had gone there to hear the lecture. So he was immersed in that lecture, wonderful words of Kathopanishad. At certain point, it came that it is told in the Kathopanishad, Angushtamatro Purusho Antaratma. When the size of the thumb, Angushta, Matro Purusho Antaratma, the Atman is present in our heart, in the Hridaya Pradesha, in the size of this Angushta, like the lamp burning. Suppose you light a lamp. Why do we light the lamp in the house? That you should always remember God or the Atman, which is there in the form of the flame of a lamp, unflickering in a windless place. Suppose you keep a lamp in a windless place without any disturbance. How does the flame burn there? It doesn't flicker, it is straight. So that lamp of that shape, in that shape, the Atman is present in our heart. So that is stated in Kathopanishad. So when Latu Maharaj heard that wonderful statement, he started telling his assistant or that sevak, that Swami or that brahmachari who was with him. Yes, वो पंडित ठीक बोल रहा है, वो पंडित ठीक बोल रहा है. For that scholar who was lecturing there on Kathopanishad and telling about Atman, it was just intellectual knowledge. But for Latu Maharaj, it is experience. He has experienced the Atman in that form in his own heart. So he became thrilled when he heard, and he started exclaiming to him, Pandit ठीक बोल रहा है, Atman is present there in the heart in that form. Then he came back after the lecture in the ashram monastery. Anytime, wherever he met his sevak, that Swami, future would be Swami, or he was a Swami at the time, he would exclaim, Pandit ठीक बोल रहा था. That Pandit was telling the true thing, that Atman is present there. Because it was experience for him. He had experienced that. Midnight, he's sleeping, he woke up. Again, that Sevak woke him up and told, Pandit Tik Pol Raha Tha. I thought something, he wants something serious. He woke him up and he's telling, the Pandit there told the right thing. The Atman is present in the heart in the form of the Angushtamatro Purusho Antaratma. So it was experience. So all that he told was out of his experience of the Atman of God, or God, what was issuing for whatever it was coming, that the jumps from the Vedas and Vedanta. What are there in the scriptures and Vedas and Vedanta? It is just the experience of the rishis and munis and great saints of the yoga. So whatever they have experienced, it's the truth already, the universal truth. If you experience anything about God, it is also the same thing. Then why are the scriptures kept there? It is only to tally, verify whether what I have realized is the same thing. That's all, nothing else. Scriptures, the Vedas and Vedantas are not something special. They're the knowledge of God, which have been already realized by great saints, great rishis, great munis. They have been recorded and kept in the form of Vedas, Vedantas, and scriptures. So when you go forward in spiritual life, you have the same experience. It's only to tally or verify. So the words of Ramakrishna telling that one day the gems of Vedas and Vedanta will pour forth from your lips, from Latu's lips. Thus Latu was commissioned and blessed by his Guru. This prophecy later came to be fulfilled to the letter, not only in the spirit, to the letter. It would seem as though Sri Ramakrishna intended, it seemed as if Ramakrishna intended to demonstrate to the modern world. When did we get the Macaulay's education system, or the Western education system? Only after 1836. So do you think that people were uneducated before 1836? In the 17th century, in the 16th century, in the 14th century, or 5,000 years back, 10,000 years back, 15,000, 60,000 years back, people in India, were they uneducated? No, not at all. They were really educated. So here, Sri Ramakrishna might be intended to demonstrate to the modern world through Latu that God, or the highest knowledge, can be realized without the study of books and scriptures. But please do not take this as that you should not study scriptures and this thing. We don't have that Shraddha like Latu. If you have that Shraddha, then you need not. You will realize the moment the Guru will give you one of the Mahavakyas, you will go and sit and realize it immediately. Should have that much Shraddha. So for us, we have to go through the normal process of studying the scriptures and getting the knowledge from that. But if you have the Shraddha, like Latu, then you can realize God. But even then, even having so much of Shraddha, let us see how much of disciplines he had to follow, how Ramakrishna trained him. Let us see in the life. So Ramakrishna intended to demonstrate to the modern world through Latu that God can be realized without the study of books and scriptures. That spiritual wisdom comes not through intellectualism, but through inner realization. Spiritual wisdom comes to us not through intellectual gymnastics. If you have a good brain in mathematics, if you have a good analytical brain, or if you have the highest degree or master degree, that in no way is a cause for God realization. But spiritual wisdom comes through inner realization, your Shraddha. Although, as mentioned before, the natural tendency of the mystics, everyone you can see, mystics, is to remain hidden. They don't want to boast. They don't go on boasting of their greatness or their knowledge. They want to remain silent, hidden. Most of that, the Rishi, Munis, nobody had any copyright, or they never wrote their name. They never wanted name and fame. So they tried to remain hidden, unseen, and unheard. The spiritual traditions of the world show us that God loves to play and manifest himself through these saints. Their life stories are also a great inspiration for humanity. Once Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, a disciple of Swami Vivekananda, a great Sanskrit scholar, a learned disciple of Vivekananda, asked Latu Maharaj for permission to write the biography, Latu Maharaj biography, wanted to write the biography of Latu Maharaj. Immediately, Latu said, Mahashai, sir, please do not write anything about me. I am an insignificant person. If you wish to write anything, then please write about Sri Ramakrishna. Please write about Swami Vivekananda. That will really benefit the humanity. That was the humility of Latu Maharaj. And that great Sanskrit scholar, a disciple of Swami Vivekananda, seeing the greatness of Latu Maharaj, he wanted to write his biography. So this was the reply. Sir, please do not write anything about me. I am an insignificant person. If you wish to write anything, please write about Ramakrishna, about Swami Vivekananda. That will benefit humanity. Now we do not know, as I told you, much of his early life. Relatively little is known about Latu's childhood. Like many other mystics, he was very reticent about himself. If anyone asked him about his childhood, he would say, do you mean to leave God aside to talk about this insignificant person? Don't be silly. This would be followed by a stern silence, and the subject would be abandoned. What little is known about Latu's childhood has been pieced together from comments somewhere while talking to somebody. Somehow something of his childhood would escape. It was not intentional. It would escape. Some words about his childhood would escape. So all that has been collected. What little is known about Latu's childhood has been pieced together from comments Latu Maharaj made let slip from time to time. Latu Maharaj was born in northeastern India, Chapra district. We have a ashrama on the birthplace or the place where Latu Maharaj was born, Chapra in Bihar. So he was born in Chapra in Bihar, northeastern part of India, probably sometime just after the middle of 19th century. So, as I told you, there was poverty, there was famine, there was this plague and other diseases created by the Britishers to create artificial scarcity of food and all the things to evict people and make them bring to the cities, towns, or to the places where they were taking to do the work. The places of mining and other things create the jobs there. So here, Latu Maharaj was also almost like many of the South Africans, the Fijian people, the West Indies people who all left India at the time due to all these problems. Most of them were from this area because there was a lot of poverty. There was a lot of problems created by the British in that area. So many people came to South Africa. The South Africans also came from, most of them from North India came from this area, Bihar. So during the same time, that is the middle of 19th century, it is 1850 or 1860, 1850, you can think that it's 1850, middle of 19th century. Now, Latu Maharaj, probably sometimes just after the middle of 19th century, he was born in Chapra, district of Bihar. He was given the name Raktu Rama. As I told you in the beginning, it comes from the word Apabhramsha of Rakshatu Rama. It has become Raktu Rama. Rama alone should protect you. Why did he get that name Raktu Rama? Rama alone should protect you. Which means, O Rama, be thou the protector of this child. His father was a poor villager, and although both of his parents worked hard, they could barely provide one good meal a day for the family. Both Latu's father and mother died before Rakturama was 5 years old. He was left in the care of an uncle who was very affectionate towards this boy. That uncle didn't have his own children, so he brought up Latu Maharaj, was an orphan at that time, lost both of his father and mother as his own child. Growing up in the village in Bihar, in Chapra, Rakturam. So you should note, what is this Rakturam? Rakshatu Rama. Rama, you have to protect this child. Rakshatu Rama. Rakturam led a carefree life, often spending his days with other boys who were tending cows and sheep. He was from the shepherd community, tending sheep in the field. Sometimes he would wander off alone, even to other villages, and then his uncle would have to search for him. Once in later years, he gave a glimpse of the mood of this period of his life. Latu Maharaj himself told about his childhood. I used to wander freely with the cowherd boys. How simple and guileless those cowherd boys or the shepherd boys were. You can't have real joy unless you are like that. Just notice your life when you were in poverty in the village with less facilities, with less money, how much of pure joy you had. With all the sophistication, with all the new gadgets, with all the facilities now, where is all that joy, pure joy, unsullied joy? It's all gone. So Latu Maharaj himself used to tell, I used to wander freely with the cowherd boys. How simple and guileless they were. You can't have real joy unless you are like that. Rakshatu uncle, Rakthuram's uncle, although not as poor as his parents, that is Latu's parents, had a tendency to spend beyond his means. So income and expenditure. So though his income was meager, expenditure was too much. Although he was not very poor, but Rakturama's uncle had a tendency to spend beyond his means, and this finally led him into debt and was ultimately forced to sell his house and all his possessions to his creditors, hoping to find a means of livelihood in the city. Rakturam and his uncle traveled several hundred miles to Calcutta and food. So people from that poor area, because of poverty, in search of job, in search of livelihood, started emigrating from the place Bihar, Chapra and that area. And some people emigrated to Fiji Islands, to South Africa, Durban, some to Suriname, some to other places, West Indies, so many other places. And now at the same time, see, that's why now the people in South Africa who have come from India, they can now connect their life with Rakturam or Latu Maharaj. most of the people who are hearing now in this lecture in South Africa, they have come from Bihar and that area of India to South Africa. So at the same time as the ancestors and the parents, the great parents of the South Africans here and Fiji Islands and West Indies, they left their villages because of poverty created by the British. Yeah, Latu Maharaj also left with his uncle from that place in search of livelihood hundreds of miles away to Calcutta. Even the ancestors, the forefathers, traveled from Calcutta to South Africa. So Rakturam and his uncle traveled several hundred miles to Calcutta on foot, arriving virtually destitute. Fortunately, they knew one person called Poolchand, a village neighbor who worked in the Calcutta office of Dr. Ramachandra Datta. In those days, there was no medical degree. So LMP or something like that, they used to train the Britishers and they were called doctors. They would learn from the other doctors to give some medicines. They would train them in some chemistry. They would be chemists. They would be issuing medicine, dispensing medicines. They knew little about medical science. So they were, even now in India, you can find such doctors, LMP doctors. So this Ramachandra Datta was also a doctor like that in the British period. So there Poolchand knew about this person, Dr. Ramachandra Datta, a village neighbor of Latu, worked in Calcutta office of Dr. Ramachandra Datta. Even now, if you go to Calcutta, there are more number of people from Bihar working there who come from that poor area in search of livelihood. So then too, a relative of Latu's uncle or a friend of Latu's uncle lived there, Poolchand, a village neighbor who worked in the Calcutta office of Dr. Ramachandra Datta. Through this friend, Rakturam, Latu was hired as a servant in Ramachandra Datta's house. So now, through this Poolchand, a friend of the uncle, was working in the office of Ramachandra Datta. This young boy from Chapra, Latu, Rakshaturama, maybe at the time he was age of 7 or 8 or 10, whatever. He came to Calcutta and he was hired as a servant in the house of Ramachandra Datta. Now you will see how this will take him to Ramakrishna. How did Ramachandra Datta take him to Ramakrishna? Although the actual date of arrival in Calcutta is not known, Rakturam, that is Latu, was very young when he came to the city. That boy proved to be very energetic and faithful servant. Faithful. He did the household shopping, carried Ramachandra Datta's lunch to his office from the house, took the children of Ramachandra Datta to the park to play, and did all sorts of odd jobs around the home. Despite his busy schedule, he also used to find time for wrestling and other physical exercises. He used to go to the local village gymnasium, not the modern day gymnasium. They would teach some exercises, physical exercises, and also wrestling. Akhada, wrestling akhada it is called. So in spite of the busy schedule, he used to go to the gymnasium to learn exercise and also wrestling. Rakturam, Latu had a natural frankness and honesty that was enhanced by his youth and also lack of sophistication. Ramachandra came to trust this boy very much because of his honesty, because of his unsophistication, frankness. Ramachandra Datta had a lot of trust in this boy. Once, a friend of Ramchandra Datta, he suspected that this boy Rakturam or Latu had stolen some coins from the household shopping money. You know, the people have this doubting nature. The friend of Ramchandra Datta started suspecting that he is knocking off money which you give to purchase the groceries or something like that. Wanted to protect Ramchandra Datta, the friend asked Rakturam directly, "My boy, tell me honestly, how much money did you pocket today?" Rakturam retorted sharply, "Sir, I am a servant, I am not a thief." The boldness of this reply offended that man, and he complained to this Ramchandra Datta. But Ramchandra Datta supported the boy and said, "He's not a thief. Whatever he needs, he asks from me and my wife. So where is the question of stealing? He can't steal. He's a very sincere boy." So that was the frankness and honesty and boldness of Latu. When you are true, when you are sincere, you'll not have any fear. You're open and frank. Now let us see, because that is very important, first meeting with Ramakrishna. Rakturam, now in Calcutta, in the household of Ramchandra Datta, you know that anywhere and everywhere, people can't use the long names. They want to shorten everything. They'll give a short name or a nickname. So like that here, Rakturam in this household came to be known with his sweet name or the pet name Latu. So that's how he gets the name Latu. His real name was Rakturam. So when he came to work here, the household members of Ramchandra Datta gave him the pet name Latu. Rakturam became known as Latu in his new Calcutta surroundings, and he was called by that name thereafter. Sri Ramakrishna, with his village accent, because Sri Ramakrishna was also not much educated, very simple, he had the village accent. He would affectionately call him Leto or Noto. So from Rakturam, it became Latu, and from Latu, Ramakrishna started calling him Leto or Noto, and Swami Vivekananda used to call him Plato. In later years, Swami Vivekananda, listening to Latu's words of wisdom, would address him playfully as Plato. In return, Latu would call Vivekananda by his pre-monastic name, Narain. He couldn't pronounce Narain, he would tell Lorraine. He couldn't pronounce properly Narain. He used to call him Lorraine. But with his Bihari accent, Latu pronounced it as Lorraine. Sri Ramakrishna lived at Dakshineshwar Temple Garden, a few miles north of Calcutta, on the eastern bank of the Ganga. After completing many years of spiritual practices, Ramakrishna began to long for devotees and disciples to whom he would give his teachings, the fruits of his realization. So gradually, the disciples began to gather around Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar. Ramchandra Datta, Latu's employer, was one of the first disciples, householder disciples, to come to Sri Ramakrishna. Having a devotional nature, Ramchandra Datta loved to speak about Sri Ramakrishna, which enkindled Latu's passion and love for God. So Ramchandra Datta was one of the earliest and foremost disciples, householder disciples. He was the first maybe to go to Ramakrishna. After going there, hearing the conversation, he used to, because he was of the devotional nature, he used to come and speak about Ramakrishna's teachings to his children, to his wife. So that's how Latu, who was a servant there in the house as a young boy, could hear the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and also about Sri Ramakrishna. So that enkindled Latu's passionate love for God. One day, Latu heard Ramachandra repeating some of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. And what is that wonderful teaching which Ramachandra was mentioning there in the household, which Latu heard and which inspired him? Now, if you hear that, it may also inspire you. Is that God sees into the mind of a man, that is the heart of a man, without concern for what he is or where he is. God is not bothered about your externals, your external beauty, your external rich, your polished language, or your sophisticated behavior. But God watches or sees your heart. God sees into the mind of a man without concern for what he is or where he is. He who yearns for God, he who yearns for God and wants none other than God, to such a man, God reveals himself. What is the easiest method of God realization? You have to yearn for God. That's all, nothing more. Nothing is wanted. Nothing else. So simple. We make everything spiritual life complicated. God he wants only simple love from you. Nothing else. Bhakti, devotion. So again, we will go through that wonderful statement of Sri Ramakrishna, which inspired for the first time Latu. What is that? God sees into the mind of a man without concern for what he is or where he is. He who yearns for God and wants none other than God. To such a man, God reveals himself. One should call on him. One should call on God with a simple and innocent heart, without sincere longing. Without sincere longing, none can see God. One should pray to him in solitude. One should pray to God in solitude and weep for him. You have to shed tears. You have to weep for God. You have to long for the realization to see God. Without sincere longing, none can see God. One should pray to God in solitude and weep for him. Only then will he bestow his mercy. So simple. Tears can be got only by the human beings. Even some of the animals, like cow and other animals, elephant, you can see tears coming from that eyes. But it is not the emotional tears. It's only to moisten the eyes for protection, the salt and other chemicals to protect the eyes from the bacteria and virus and the dust. So the tears come there to the eyes. But it's only in human beings. You are the only people, the human beings, who get tears out of emotion, whether it is joy or sadness or whatever, helplessness. When your ego is crushed, then you get the tears. It's emotional tears. So only human beings have this capacity. And now, which is there to protect your eyes or to put out your suppressed emotions, God has given this opportunity of tears for the human beings. And if you shed tears for God, if you weep for God, if you put out this emotion in the form of tears to God, you can realize God. In Kali Yuga, the Lord has made God realization so easy. After completing all the scriptures like Mahabharata and the Vedas, Veda Vyasa, almost at the end of Dwapara Yuga and beginning of the Kali Yuga was about to begin. Then he made a bold statement, "Oh, men of Kali Yuga, you are so lucky. All the other yugas, it was very difficult to realize God. You had to do penance, austerities for thousands and thousands of years of yaga, yagna, meditation, and other things. But you people of Kali Yuga are so lucky. Just by repeating the name of the Lord by devotion, you can get God realization. God has made it so easy. Even though it is so easy, see, we don't make use of that. See here, it's so easy. Ramakrishna is telling, the Lord himself, the Avatara is himself is telling. See, that is the difference. If you have faith, Shraddha, immediately you will catch this. That is the difference between a man of Shraddha and a man or a woman without Shraddha. They will just hear and then forget it. But people who have Shraddha, immediately they will take it inside and then start practicing it. And what is that? What is Sri Ramakrishna telling? What is that wonderful statement of Sri Ramakrishna which inspired Latu, a young boy of 10 or 9 at that time, in the house of Ramachandra Datta? He who yearns for God and wants none other than God, he will surely realize, or he will surely get the grace of God. One should pray to God in solitude. Your devotion and other things is not to be shown. It is not for ostentation or for show off. It should be within. It should be seen only, shown only to God. So you should pray to him in solitude and weep for him. See, weep for him. Shedding tears for God will increase the devotion and will make you get the grace of God. It will wash off. Ramakrishna tells, just like the needle or a piece of iron which is lying down in the mud for many, many years. So because of the impurity, it cannot be attracted by the magnet. But if you wash it, remove all the dirt, then the magnet will attract it. Likewise, your tears of love for God will remove all the impurities of your heart, and your mind, your heart will be attracted towards God. This is told by Ramakrishna himself. So how much you can make use of your tears by turning it towards God, shedding tears, weeping for God, you can get the grace of God and the realization of God. Without sincere longing, none can see God. One should pray to him in solitude and weep for him. Only then God will bestow his mercy. These words of Sri Ramakrishna, which was spoken by Ramachandra Datta in the house, impressed Latu greatly. See, he had Shraddha. Why doesn't make any impact on us? I need not tell. Latu Maharaj had Shraddha, immediately caught it and started practicing, putting it into practice, and got the result. What did he do? These words impressed Latu greatly. Now, at least now, if you don't have Shraddha, start getting that. Start putting it into practice. Implement it in your life. These words impressed Latu greatly. And he would sometimes be found lying covered with blanket. What did Ramakrishna tell? It should be done in solitude. Where does Latu get solitude? He can't go here and there. He has to always work in the house. He's a servant. 24/7, he should be there working. So how could he? What is the solitude? He would cover himself in the blanket on the bed and weep for God, so that nobody should see. Only God should see. That was his solitude. He would cover himself with blanket so people would think he's sleeping. Or if they see him crying and weeping, they would think, oh, he's remembering the dead parents, father and mother, and his village and his friends and his uncle, and he may be weeping. Other people would think he was weeping for something else. But in reality, Latu was weeping for God. He would cover himself in blanket and then he would cry for God. These words of Ramakrishna impressed Latu greatly, so immediately he put it into practice. No delay, no procrastination, immediate. Shubhasya shigram ashubhasya kalaharanam. Wonderful statement from Ramayana. Whatever is good, immediately put it into practice. Shubhasya shigram. Shubha, mangalakari, good things. Shigram, you have to do it very quickly. No procrastination, no delay. Ashubhasya kalaharanam. The bad things have to be postponed, but we do the reverse. The bad things we do first, and we go on postponing the good things. So, but it should be reverse. That is Shraddha. See here, Latu Maharaj immediately put it into practice. The words of Sri Ramakrishna. Those words of Sri Ramakrishna impressed Latu greatly, and he could sometimes be found lying covered with his blanket, quietly wiping tears from his eyes. However, he never told anyone why he was weeping. Now, Latu eagerly waited for an opportunity to see Sri Ramakrishna. One Sunday, either in late 1879, not the year 1879, South Africans and other people from India came to South Africa in 1860. So this is 1879, either in late 1879 or 1880. While Ramachandra Datta was getting ready to go to Dakshineshwar to meet Ramakrishna, Latu asked him, would you take me with you to Sri Ramakrishna? Please, O Master. Because he was a servant, a young boy. He had heard about Ramakrishna. He was eager to meet Ramakrishna. So when Ramachandra was about to go to Dakshineshwar, this boy came and eagerly asked, Master, would you like me? Would you take me with you? I want to see Sri Ramakrishna. See that Shraddha, that faith is pushing Latu to go and see Ramakrishna, his Guru. I want to see Sri Ramakrishna. Observing Latu's earnestness, Ramachandra agreed. Now, he brought him to Dakshineshwar. When Sri Ramakrishna saw Latu for the first time, Sri Ramakrishna asked his householder disciple Ramachandra Datta, Ram, did you bring this boy with you? Where did you get him? I see some holy signs in this boy. I can see Ramakrishna could see in and out of anybody. The moment Ramakrishna would see a person, Ramakrishna himself would tell, just like the things which are kept in a glass box. Like you could see anything which is kept in a glass box. Like that Ramakrishna could see the mind and everything is past and future of anybody the moment he used to come to him. So here, the moment he saw this boy Latu, Ramakrishna saw wonderful things in him. Sri Ramakrishna, that is the master, when he saw Latu for the first time with Ramachandra Datta, he asked Ramachandra Datta, he used to sweetly call Ramachandra Datta as Ram. Ram, did you bring this boy with you? Where did you get him? I see some holy signs in him. The potential of spirituality is there in him. I can see that. Ramakrishna asked Latu now to sit down. Ramakrishna was very pleased to see this boy. And now he asked him to sit down there in Dakshineshwar. If you go to Dakshineshwar, Kali temple, that room of Ramakrishna is there. You can imagine. See, this should be your meditation. Leela Dhyana. You should be picturizing everything, meditating on everything. Latu has gone there to the room of Sri Ramakrishna. Then there, Ramakrishna is asking Ramchandra Datta all these things. And now he's asking Latu to sit down there in that room, to picturize everything. Leela Dhyana. So now Ramakrishna asked Latu to sit down and began to speak about ever free souls. Ever free souls. That is, those who are born liberated, those who are already liberated, ever free souls. Jivan Muktas. They are liberated even while living, not after death or maybe after some life. Now they are liberated while living. They are called Jivan Muktas. So Ramakrishna suddenly made Latu to sit down there and started talking to the people about ever free souls. That means this boy is an ever free soul. The knowledge of those who are ever free souls only needs to be unveiled, as it were. These ever free souls, they have that knowledge full, they are to the brim. Only a thin layer of covering is obstructing. Remove that layer and the knowledge is out. That is the way of the ever free souls. The knowledge of those who are ever free souls only need to be unveiled. Ghungatka phatakholare, tuhe Rama milenge. On the Ramanavami day, I sang that song written by Kabir Das. North India and other portion in India, the women, they wear the pallu, the sari, covering their face. That's called ghungat, veil, covering the face. So Kabir Das is using this analogy, ghungatka phatakholare. Even in the puja, we use the avaguntana mudra like this. Avaguntana means that covering, removing that cover of ignorance. So what is that mudra when we do like this, avaguntana mudra? Removing the veil of covering of ignorance. Means when the ignorance is uncovered, what is there discovered? That is the Lord. That is the Paramatman, that is the Parabrahman, the God everywhere consciousness. So in the puja we do this avaguntana mudra. So here too, avaguntana, remove ghungataka phatakholare tuhe Rama milenge. You will get Rama. Rama is already there, nothing to be found out newly. So he was speaking, Ramakrishna was speaking about ever free souls. They are full to the brim. The knowledge is full. The knowledge of those who are ever free souls only need to be unveiled, as it were. They are like the underground springs. You know, in the earth, there will be underground springs. And especially not only in the ordinary earth, in the granite stone too, in the mountains too. On the top of the mountain, there will be that springs in that. It will be at a great height. Just remove the chip of that stone and that water started gushing out like a spring. So with force, great force, because that springs will be there in the mountains, earth, below. So giving this analogy, Ramakrishna is telling the knowledge of these ever free souls only is to be unveiled, as it were. They are like the underground springs, which remained covered until a stone mason digging in the earth removes that particular rock. A small chip of that block will be there, chisel it out, and the water gushes. When that stone mason removes that particular rock, then the water begins to flow. Speaking about these ever free souls and the knowledge, and removing that, the stone mansion, removing that block of earth, and the knowledge comes out. Ramakrishna was talking and walking there around the devotees. He came and he told, the moment the stone mansion removes that block, the knowledge, the water comes out. He came and touched Latu, who was sitting there, this boy of 7 or 8. He just touched him. Then the water begins to flow. Saying this, Ramakrishna came and touched Latu. He removed that cover by just the touch of this ever-free soul, Latu. He could see he was an ever-free soul, great soul. He just by the touch, he removed that block, covering the knowledge of God. Then the water begins to flow. Saying this, Ramakrishna touched Latu, and the boy went into an ecstatic state. He went into samadhi, he went into ecstasy immediately by the touch of Sri Ramakrishna. What happened to Latu? Tears trickled from his eyes, tears of joy trickled from his eyes, and his lips began to quiver with emotion. This continued for an hour, not 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That joy, that removing of that block, uncovering of that veil, brought in that gushing of that knowledge to such an extent that he was in ecstasy, that bhava samadhi, for more than an hour. He was crying. His whole body was quivering with joy. Lips were quivering. Tears of joy was flowing down. And he was in that bhava samadhi for more than an hour. Tears trickled down from Latu's eyes and his lips began to quiver with emotion. This continued for an hour. At last, Sri Ramakrishna touched Latu and he slowly returned. The Latu returned to a normal state of consciousness. Ramakrishna had this wonderful capacity. Just by touch, he could uncover. He could give them knowledge of God, could give them anything. And with the touch, he could also do anything. That is miracle. Just curing some disease and giving some gold coins. Is that miracle? Real miracle is changing your character, giving God realization. That is miracle. And Ramakrishna, just by touch, he could give you, and he could also stop it. So now we will stop our conversation here at this wonderful meeting of Latu with Ramakrishna and getting that spiritual knowledge. We will continue that in the next class. So when will be our next class, Naresh? Is it Thursday and Friday? Sunday, Monday? Or tomorrow is Monday. So tomorrow also we will have the class. Tomorrow at the same time, 6:30 South African time. And Indian Standard Time, it would be 9 o'clock, I think. Okay, whatever that might be. Now we have five more minutes left. If you have any questions about what we have discussed today or of anything connected with spiritual life, you can ask. Any question about today's discussion or anything connected with spiritual life? Okay, I think there are no questions, because in the beginning of the class itself, I told that samshaya. So no samshaya, no doubts. So no questions. So we shall, if there are no questions, then we can conclude today's session with a prayer. There is one on the message. They have typed Renukesh Rao from Bangalore. how to keep Shraddha amidst pressing problems in the world. See, problems will be always there. Never is a time when there will be no problems in our life. So our Shraddha is what our belief and our thing is. So whatever might be the external thing, my Shraddha will be the same thing. It cannot be disturbed. It cannot go down. It should increase only. Whatever I am today is my Shraddha. What is the difference between one man and another man, or woman and another woman? Is in their intensity of Shraddha. That makes the whole difference. Why a man is great? Because of his Shraddha. Why that woman is so great? Because of the Shraddha. So Shraddha cannot go down, it will increase. That is your real true nature. So how to keep Shraddha amidst pressing problems in the world? Yes, the answer is there. Satsang, hearing, reading about great souls. So your Shraddha increases. Constantly you have to read the life and teachings of great souls, about the Avatar Purushas, the Bhagavata, the Ramayana. You start hearing always these good things, your Shraddha increases. So that's very simple. Read and hear about the great people, the life and teachings of great people, and the satsangas, the lectures. So that will increase our Shraddha. It's so simple, nothing costly. It's not at all costly. It's very simple. Okay, that was one of the questions on the live chat. Any other questions? Okay. We'll conclude with the prayer. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Pridite Prinitam Jagat Harihi Om Tatsat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you. Namaste. Om Namo Narayanaya.